What happened next in the Philippine waters defied every standard rule of naval warfare. The Japanese Navy had no idea that a single U.S. submarine had slipped so close to Tawi-Tawi, the beating heart of their fleet operations. Their battleships, carriers, tankers, and destroyers were all preparing for Operation Ago, the massive counterstrike meant to stop the American advance. Every destroyer available was guarding this region, but none of them were prepared for what was coming. Because the USS Harder wasn't hunting ships, it was hunting hunters, destroyers, the apex predator of the sea. Dealey understood one thing better than any commander in the Pacific. A destroyer is most dangerous before it knows you're there, but once it's charging straight at you, the danger works both ways. And so began the most terrifying 4-day period the Japanese Navy had ever experienced. June 6, 1944. While the Allies stormed the beaches of Normandy, halfway across the world, the Harder fired the shot that kicked off its legendary war patrol. A Japanese destroyer moving in formation suddenly detected something unusual, the faint trace of a periscope feather across the morning water. The ship turned hard toward it, full speed, guns ready, depth charges prepared. The crew thought they had caught a submarine, but they hadn't. They had been invited. Dealey held his nerve. He didn't dive. He didn't run. He waited, letting the destroyer race toward him. Only when the enemy closed in, straight down the Harder's bow, he fired. A perfect down-the-throat torpedo. The explosion tore through the Japanese destroyer's forward hull. A plume of black smoke marked its burial, and news of the sinking spread like wildfire through the Tawi-Tawi fleet. Admiral Toyoda was stunned. Destroyers simply weren't supposed to lose perpendicular head-on engagements with submarines. But one had, and this was just the beginning. Hours later, the Japanese sent another destroyer to hunt the attacker. Harder remained in the area, a bold move bordering on reckless. Any other submarine would have escaped by now. But Dealey wasn't after safety. He was after impact. The escorts detected Harder, formed a line, and rushed at full speed. This time, they launched depth charges so violently that the Harder's hull groaned. Lights flickered, pipes ruptured, men fell to their knees. Inside the sub, every instinct said, dive deeper, run away. Dealey did the opposite. He surfaced just long enough to regain position, then fired again. A second destroyer disappeared beneath the waves. 2 kills in less than 24 hours. For the Japanese command, this was no longer a minor threat. It was a crisis. Day 3. Fear sets in destroyer. Crews began refusing to close with the submarine at high speed. They wanted distance. They wanted safety. But safety was impossible, because the Harder was waiting for them to hesitate. Dealey understood human fear better than any tactician. He knew that once enemy captains became anxious, their decisions slowed. Their angles were off. Their maneuvers became predictable. On June 7th, Harder ambushed a third destroyer. And as the torpedo struck, Japanese sailors shouted in disbelief, "Another one? From where?" Harder's reputation was spreading faster than the wreckage. Day 4. The impossible triple kill. By the 4th day, the Japanese admiral at Tawi-Tawi sent one of the most elite destroyers, the Tanikaze, to finish the intruder once and for all. The Tanikaze had superior sonar, well-trained gunners, and experienced officers. It should have been an easy kill. Instead, it became Dealey's masterpiece. The Tanikaze charged Harder at 30 knots, a terrifying sight for any submarine crew. Inside the Harder's control room, everything shook. The sound of engines roaring directly down the bow felt like a freight train smashing underwater. Men held on to pipes. Some prayed. Dealey remained perfectly calm. When the Tanikaze was almost close enough to ram the submarine right out of existence, Dealey fired a spread of torpedoes directly down its throat. The Japanese destroyer never stood a chance. The ocean erupted. Harder dove deep, explosions rocking the water above. The crew waited in tense silence. Then sonar reported it. No screw noises, no echo returns, no life. The Tanakaze was gone. Another kill. Within 4 days, Harder sank 5 Japanese warships, and several more were damaged beyond recovery. This patrol didn't just destroy ships, it sabotaged Japan's entire operational tempo. Admiral Toyoda could no longer safely use Tawi-Tawi as the launch point for his fleet. Destroyer escorts were shaken and disorganized. Night patrols were disrupted. Resupply routes were crippled, and morale was devastated. Toyoda delayed key fleet movements out of fear that Harder was waiting. These delays directly affected the timing of the Battle of the Philippine Sea, the same battle later called the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Harder hadn't just sunk ships. It had broken Japan's confidence, and confidence is everything in war. When Harder finally returned from her patrol, Admiral Ralph Christie reviewed the combat reports and said one of the most iconic lines of the Pacific War. Harder's record speaks for itself. She has written her name into naval history. Samuel Dealey received the Medal of Honor. The Harder became known as "Hit 'em Harder," and even Japanese naval historians, years later, admitted, "The Harder fought like no submarine we had ever encountered." What Harder achieved was not luck. It was not chance. It was raw courage, brilliant instinct, and absolute refusal to bow to fear. A single submarine, outnumbered, outgunned, and operating inside the heart of enemy territory, changed the course of the Pacific War. For 4 days, the Japanese Navy wasn't hunting submarines. It was running from one. That is why the USS Harder is remembered today not just as a vessel, but as a legend, a symbol of what happens when ordinary men perform extraordinary acts under impossible odds, and why history will forever honor the crew who dared to do the impossible and succeeded. But what truly set the USS Harder apart was not just Dealey's accuracy, it was his attitude toward fear. Most submarine skippers avoided destroyers because one mistake meant instant death. A single depth charge in the wrong place could snap a submarine's spine. Crews knew this. Commanders knew this. Fear kept most of them cautious, logical, predictable. Dealey was different. He believed that the only way out was through. He believed that the best way to fight a hunter was to become the predator. And during those 4 days in 1944, he proved it again and again. On June 9th, shortly after sending the Minetsuki to the bottom, the USS Harder encountered another destroyer sweeping the area. Instead of slipping away quietly, Dealey made the same impossible decision. "We attack." The enemy destroyer charged at them at full speed, its bow slicing through the waves, guns firing, sonar hammering the ocean. The crew braced for the familiar sound, the metallic shriek of depth charges unspooling into the sea. But Dealey waited, and waited, and waited, until the destroyer was so close the crew could hear its engines vibrating through the hull. Then he fired. The torpedo streaked forward, unstoppable, a silver streak in the dark. Seconds later, the water erupted. The Japanese destroyer split apart, its hull lifted by the explosion before it vanished beneath the sea. 2 destroyers down. Same day, same insane tactic. Word spread fast across Japanese naval communications. The Imperial Navy began referring to Harder by a new nickname, the submarine that comes straight at you. The next morning, Harder encountered a 3rd destroyer. Same situation, same odds, same danger. But Dealey wasn't operating on fear. He was operating on instinct, precision, and an understanding of tactics so deep that even the Japanese Admiralty struggled to predict him. Once again, the destroyer charged. Once again, Dealey refused to dive and hide. Once again, he waited until the enemy filled the periscope lens, close enough to feel like it could crush them. And once again, he fired. Another perfect hit, another destroyer sinking, another crew rescued from the water by nearby Japanese ships, while the destroyer's captain radioed in disbelief. This submarine fights like no other. But the fourth and fifth kills are where Harder entered military legend. By June 11th, Japanese commanders were convinced they were being hunted by an entire wolf pack of American submarines. The idea that one vessel, just one, could cripple their escort forces seemed impossible. So they sent more destroyers, faster ones, with better sonar, with more depth charges, with orders to destroy Harder at all costs. When the fourth destroyer appeared on sonar, the Harder's crew was exhausted. They had barely slept. The pressure inside the boat had become suffocating. Every man knew that the next engagement might be the last. Dealey could have retreated. No one would have blamed him. But Dealey wasn't thinking about safety. He was thinking about the bigger picture. The destroyers he was sinking were not just patrol ships. They were critical escorts, protecting a huge Japanese fleet assembling at Tawi-Tawi for an attack on American carriers. Every destroyer he sank wasn't just a victory. It was a warning shot that would echo across the Pacific. And so, he attacked again. The fourth destroyer was hit and sunk, clean, direct, and devastating. Hours later, the fifth target appeared. By now, the Japanese knew exactly what kind of submarine they were facing. The destroyer zigzagged aggressively, sonar blasting the sea, guns firing at anything that looked like a periscope. This was a desperate, furious dance, predator versus predator.